Hello and welcome to Library Drawing Party. Today we're going to be drawing this beautiful mountain trail scene. To get started, we're going to do a watercolor base using our rainbow watercolor set. First thing we want to do is use the brown. So we're going to create this wooden fence. You notice that the top part of the fence starts in a corner. So we're going to pull that up to where the gazebo is going to be. Then about an inch over from that is the bottom part of the fence. Like we talked about with the perspective before, it gets smaller as it gets further away. Then we'll have the fence posts in the middle. So the gazebo has the box. And then the box comes up slightly, so there's a slight angle here. Then we have our four posts. And one in the back should be very light because it's far away from us. It's okay if your brush is dry. We want to see the wood grain, which would be the strokes. For the roof, we put a straight line across and then we come down a bit. And then everything angles up. Once you have your gazebo painted, then you can go ahead and add the trees. I'm going to start with this tree in the middle here. So you draw one line coming down and then lines going side to side. It gets wider the further it is from the top. And it's okay to have some variation in color that helps add to the shading. I'm adding some more lines to show the branches. You want there to be different colors to help show the many dimensions of the tree. And then the next step is to add our mountains in the background. So I'm just using red to get this nice pink color. Give it a sunset tone. And I'm gonna put some orange underneath it. So it's like a mountain that's closer to you. And then we want that to dry a little bit while we work on the other trees. So I'm gonna start with this tree, which is smaller. Same technique, we want the side to side. Branches Want to have some variation in the color. And let's work on tree in the background. So this is one giant tree behind the gazebo. And it's gonna jut out a little bit into the main tree in the center. Now, if you get some green into your brown, no problem. Just take your water and paint your water over the green, and it'll mix it into the brown. And even if you see a little bit of green, it'll just look like part of the wood grain. You can add a little bit of brown on top to put some of those textural lines that we had added before back in. Fence post. Okay. While our brush has brown on it, let's take the very tip of the brush and add some lines in for the tree trunks. You want to do this while the tree is still wet, because we want to mix the trunk in with the tree to help give it a sense of branches and also give it some more shading. Okay. Once you've worked on that, see if the mountains are dry. My mountains are still a little wet, so I'm gonna leave them for now. And I'm gonna work on the sky. The sky, I'm just gonna use blue to really give some contrast to our sunset mountains. And I want it to be really light. You can have strokes going every way to show the wind and the clouds and the movement of the sky. Alright, once we have our sky drawn, let's test the mountains. They're feeling a little bit drier now, but I still want to give them as much time to dry as possible. So let's work on our road. So for the road, I'm going to use some purple, a little bit of blue, and black. Mix them together. We get this gray color. This is the color that I mixed for the gray. Let's add some water to that. Once it's nice and loose, you can go ahead and add it. Now you can see I'm not going all the way out to the tree line. I'm stopping where the end of our fence post is. And that's because I want to give this sense of there being a rocky edge to our road. We want the strokes to be the direction of the road or the trail. And then make sure your brush is nice and wet so we can give this really light coat. And then dry your brush off a bit. And we'll put in some more horizontal lines to show in between the rocks on the edge. Now, this time, your mountains should be pretty dry. And we want them to be dry because we're going to be layering a dry coat of green on top of the mountains. So get your brush as dry as possible. Our page should be as dry as possible. There should be a little hint of water in the green, but not too much. You can test it on a piece of scrap paper. This is the texture we're going for right here. So once your brush is dry, then when you have a lot of pigment on your brush, you're going to start near the trees. And then as you work your way out, you're going to put very faint dots over our mountains to help give the sense of trees without adding too much color. So it's more of a textural thing. So we want a lot of pigment at the bottom because we want to show the trees. This will show the trees in the distance. And do some brown too. Get some variation. So this way we can show the trees and that they carry up into the mountain without losing our red and orange that we worked so hard to create. We don't want to lose our trees in the foreground though. So you can work to fill in any spaces. You can add some more color, add a little bit more brown for some shading and branches. And there you have it. That's our watercolor base. Best to leave it out overnight and then work on the colored pencils in the morning. But you can also probably leave it out for an hour or two to get it totally dry, and then we'll be ready for the next step. And now for the colored pencils. First thing we're going to work on is our fence post. So let's take our dark brown and let's give some shading to the bottom of the fence. Let's do it for the top one too. Let's add in some lines to show the wood grain. And I'm gonna put the fence post in front for this drawing. I put it behind for that one. You can choose which one you'd rather do. Have some shading at the bottom, put in some wood grain. Let's do a little bit of an edge at the top, not as strong as the bottom because we want the bottom to be nice and defined. And put in a little bit more shadow, fade it out a bit. And let's take our light brown. I'm using the reddish light brown. Gonna add a little bit more shadow. This time adding in some color. And do that with our fence post here. And you want to see some strokes for that wood grain. Once you have your fence post complete, and let's go back to our dark brown. I'm gonna add a ledge here. I'm gonna define the top bit. Let's put in some at the bottom. And then define the edge, and then there's some brown underneath that the gazebo is sitting on. So let's add that. I'm going to follow the lines that we added in before, so there's going to be a slight edge here going up. And then the side, the gazebo is going to be a little bit darker because there's a little bit more shadow. Let's put in some wood grain. Let's define the posts. Let's take that reddish brown that we used for the fence, add that back in to the gazebo. Let's add some more wood grain colors. Okay, let's take our dark brown and define the roof. We have a flat edge here and then it comes down. This is about a ½ inch thick. And then once that wraps around, let's take our dark brown and make the edges defined. If you want, you can add in the little decorative top. That's up to you. Then our shingles. So we'll have some lines going across. These don't have to be perfect. It's just to get an idea. And let's add in some individual shingles. I'm just drawing some square boxes along the lines using my dark brown. I'm going to use the reddish brown and put some next to it. If you have another kind of light brown, you can add that. We're just adding some texture and showing the placement of the shingles. And add some spread out throughout. Keep it from looking too uniform. Okay, once you've completed your roof, then you can add little details throughout. So you can take some of that dark brown and emphasize some of that trunk. You can add some shading to your trees. And do some light brown. I'll keep the brown colors pretty close to the trunk so it's clear that these are meant to be branches. You can add some green. Again, this helps with the texture. And have some going sideways so it's not totally one direction. Have some going sideways the other way. And fill in any white spaces. You can use a lighter green for some highlights. The beauty of doing a watercolor base underneath this, so you don't have to worry about filling in the spaces. We can use the colored pencils to focus solely on the texture of the branches, help establish directions. Okay, once you're satisfied with your trees, if you want to add more dots, you can do some stippling. You can also just draw some in if you'd like. You can also define your rocks a bit by using the gray. can do some opposite directions to add texture but still add definition. Can add some texture to the road. And there you have it. That's our mountain trail scene. Thank you for tuning in to Library Drawing Party. We hope to see you again next week. We have library drawing parties every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and keep being creative.